Is up, winning team? Hello and welcome back to another juicy science video where we're continuing critiquing quantum physics, right? So in the previous video, we essentially ended on the question, what if quantum science is currently built on theories lacking empirical evidence? That is a crazy wild question. If you want to know why we're asking that and how we got here, please check out the previous video and all the other videos, which all of them that are on this topic are all going to be linked in the description box below in a playlist where we have currently been reading. We've started our journey on delving into the dimensions of the universe, this, that, and the other. For those who've been on my channel for a while, you will know that I've been saying for a while now, for months, if not years, eventually our next deep dive is going to be the dimensions of the universe. We're reading this book, Beyond the Veil, Exploring the Bubble Theory in the Fourth Dimension. It's all linked in the description. We're continuing on with Sabine Hossenfelder, who is critiquing her own field. She is a particle theorist, a physicist, and she has some questions. So if you want to know about all of this and how we got to the lack of empirical support evidence and the fact that there just seems to be a lot of those theories within modern physics, accepted truth, accepted fact, factual physics, go to the previous part 2. We're now in part 3. And so we're now in a new thought that's continuing through her paper. And like I said, watch the previous videos to catch up. The dominance of fruitful and easily amendable hypotheses has consequences. So this is what she's saying in her paper. Because experiments, and all of this is all linked as well. The paper, everything, you can all find it if you catch up with the videos. I'm not going to keep repeating it for the sake of the people who are actually watching through. The dominance of fruitful and easily amendable hypotheses has consequences because experiments probing the foundations of physics have become so costly and take such a long time to build. We have to carefully consider which experiments are likely to reveal new phenomena. So I've said this to you guys as well, that one of the huge limitations of science and just our overall trusting in science, and my question is always, who's doing it, who's paying for it, and how are we going to have enough money to fund doing this thing? And we kind of touched on the way that there's a level of bias to that, because the bias comes from the people who want to do it, the people who have the money to do it have to want to do it, and they have their own reasons and potentially desired outcomes, which can cause bias and issues. And then the person doing the science, you have to find somebody who's skilled enough, who's knowledgeable enough in that area, again, which is biased. They also come with their own biases as well. And those two things have to marry together. And so these are the things to think about, not to mention that even if we had all the money in the world, things take time. And hence why I've been saying in this whole series that this is why I think the most logical thing is to follow God anyway, because in the finite time of our existence, it is actually physically impossible, like a probability of 0, that we could ever learn enough to do everything right and to do things properly on our own. So it's a waste of time doing that. Hence the knowledge of the tree of good and evil being the opposite of the tree of life. Are you catching that? I talk a lot about this in a lot of different types of series on the channel. Okay. Where are we? In this assessment, theorists' convictions about which models are likely to be correct play a big role. So again, this is now which are likely. How are you? This is always my question with science. There's always variables that we didn't consider that are potentially there, right, in any type of experiment. So even if I'm doing an experiment in a room, I could, okay, so let's say I do an experiment in an isolated system, right, in a closed system. Is it closed or isolated? I forget which is the definition of which right now. Let's say I do an experiment, and in this experiment, I'm mixing two things together in a beaker, something simple, or do use a simple example. Now, I may be measuring the temperature of that beaker. I may measure the temperature and the amounts of what I've used. I may have controlled this, that, and the other. But you know, one thing I may not have considered that is one thing that could affect the experiment? The air. There's a whole bunch of different gases in the air. How do I know? I don't know what's in the air, and I don't know how what's in the air or the construction of the air or the change of the construction of the air, how that's going to affect my experiment, because maybe what I'm producing is reacting differently based on how much oxygen is in the atmosphere, how much nitrogen is in the atmosphere, or how much water vapor is in the atmosphere. Whatever the heck that is in the air is also potentially, that's just another variable. There's always variables to think about. That's why when you do even experiments, I remember especially as a chemist, when we working with like molecules and stuff, you have to observe every single thing constantly. So like even so, like, we have to know what the atmospheric pressure is, the temperature is of everything, the this, the this, the this. There's always variables. So when it comes down to deciding what's likely and what's not likely, I'm thinking there's a whole myriad of things that we could not even question and not even like think about. Could be why something is or isn't likely. How do we know that we possess the intelligence and we possess enough information on our own to make that judgment? Is my question. And again, the biases. Well, of course, experimentalists push their own agenda, but theory should inform the commission of experiments. This, however, means that if theorists get lost, experiments become less likely to deliver new results. Theorists are less likely to get new data, and the circle closes. It's not hard to see how we got into this situation. We're judged by our publication count, or at least if we think we are being judged, or at least we think we're being judged by. A stricter quality measures in theory development would cut back productivity, but that publication pressure rewards quantity to the detriment of quality has been said many times before, and I don't want to add yet another complaint about ill-conceived measures for scientific success. Evidently, such complaints don't make a difference. And this is very true, because it's like the equivalent of me making this video. The scientific community and anybody that doesn't like anything I say, the first questions are going to be, where are you published? What is your publishing by? How many papers have you done as a measurement of my success? But technically speaking, right? And this is why I even say to people that getting a PhD, you can get a PhD in a lot of things. Google phd.org. I talked about this in the last thing. I go on there all the time because I'm always curious about what the current PhDs are out there if I ever decide to do a PhD, because I would like to do a PhD one day, right? But I kind of feel like I should just actually be given one at this point for my knowledge about certain things. But anyways, I digress. Right? You can actually get PhD in a lot of things, which therefore creates you, now you have the title of doctor. That doesn't mean that you're a doctor of medicine. It doesn't mean you know everything about whatever. What it actually means is you are highly, highly, highly specifically understanding one particular topic. So for example, I could have done my same exact research, which was computational chemistry predictions of iron UV vis emission spectra of small organic molecules, should say, in outer space. Because that's actually key. So that's rereading my own research over the years since I did this. Is in 2018. I have more and more critiques every time I look at this thing. But anyway, I could just, if I was to do this as a PhD, I would just be studying this. I would be called a doctor, but people would be like, oh wow, Dr. so-and-so, Dr. whatever. But in reality, I just know a lot about computational chemistry predictions of iron UV vis emission spectra in small organic molecules in outer space. Right? That's it. So anyway, you guys get the gist of what I'm trying to say here. And she's making a good point that because there's this need, it's almost like an unwritten rule. And the first thing that people do, especially when you challenge something that's in any field, the first thing that people do is they go to discredit, right? They go to discredit your credentials for speaking. And that's why somebody like myself, it feels like, oh, sometimes I'm working on the back foot. Because the first thing people are going to say is, well, what are your credentials? How many papers have you written and how many papers have been published? Which again, I would have to fall into somebody's, I would have to agree. I'd have to bend over for somebody in the way of what they think in order to get published. And I'm not prepared to do so because I don't agree with a lot of the science, and hence why we're here and making videos about it instead for you lovely people. So let's continue. But I'm just giving you guys things to think about, because these are the things that you get bashed into your head at school that are actually illogical when you think about it. Complaints about publication pressure don't help, because this pressure is merely a symptom, not the disease. The underlying problem is that science, like any other collective human activity, is subject to social dynamics. Thank you for saying it. Thank you. Sabine, oh my gosh, I am so glad I found this woman today. Praise be the name of Jesus. Because like, seriously, thank you for saying it. Unlike most other collective human activities, however, scientists should acknowledge threats to their objective judgment and find ways to avoid them. But this doesn't happen. Ooh. If scientists are selectively exposed to information from like-minded peers, if they are punished for not attracting enough attention, if they face hurdles to leave a research area when its promise declines, they can't be counted on to be objective. She preaching now. She preaching. That's the situation we're in today, and we have accepted it. Drop the mic, someone. Drop the freaking mic. Drop the mic. Sabine, this is what I'm talking about, and she is spot on. Listen to what she said. I'm going to read it again. If scientists are selectively exposed to information from like-minded peers, So again, I've said to you guys before, and we've discussed this idea because even again in the book, we've been talking about how you have to, he talks about interdisciplinary collaboration often in the book, right? And I say that, hence why this channel is called The Winning Team, and I like the team concept, is in any team, you want to have different people from different strengths that come together to work on the same thing, right? That's the team. That's why I say life is a group project. Every part of life should be a group project, right? We all come together with our different expertise in different types of things, and our different personalities, our different temperaments, our different perspectives. All those things together produce better results than being in situations. And unfortunately, we live in a society, and science is just the same as society in that sense, of people go off into their little cliques and they go and be around people that think like them. And that's why people are not intelligent anymore. And that's why people are not improving in intelligence. If you want to expand your intelligence, you should be spending time and having conversations with people that are completely opposite to you. That's something I've actively done throughout my entire life. I've always had friends completely different to me. I've always been around people of different ages, different backgrounds, different everything you can possibly imagine, on purpose, because you learn so much just from your average normal conversations. The same with science. It challenges the way you think, right? So again, I agree with her. Like, if you are selectively exposed to like-minded peers, you're also more likely to have people that always agree with you. You're less likely to improve because you're around people that agree with you all the time. You don't see any issues, and you're going to be lacking in self-awareness and strong self-awareness and strong self-critique skills, because you're used to having people that agree with you anyway, because you all agree together. Right? I did a whole long 1.5 hour video about pride. And in there, I talk about how a lot of people take pride in being part of a group because they don't have something intrinsically that they can stand on for themselves. So instead, they have to stand behind a title to have a sense of pride, because intrinsically, they haven't actually achieved anything by themselves. And that's why they want to be, that's why when their group is critiqued, I've talked about this like as being a Black person, right? Being a Black woman. And how that, to me, it's a part of who I am, and I'm proud. And I honestly, personally think I've got the best skin tone on the planet. I'll be real and honest. I think everybody should think that about themselves, by the way. So I hope you will feel that way about yourself. Everybody, literally. But I've said that a lot of Black people, when Black people are critiqued in any way, and I'm speaking, as you guys know, who've been here for a while, I try to refrain from speaking about groups I'm not part of, critiquing groups I'm not a part of, and correct my own group. Because again, if we all did that, then all the problems would be solved. Instead of pointing fingers, if we all just sorted out within our own camp. But anyway, as a Black woman, because if I'm now, a lot of people, I've realized their whole identity is in the fact they're Black. They have not actually done anything in their life. They have nothing intrinsically to be proud of for themselves. So when the people, Black people, are being critiqued in any way, they take it as a personal hit at them, when it's not a personal hit at them. It's a critique at an overall group of people who have things to improve on. Much do all groups of people have things to improve on. But again, if you've taken, and this is where a lot of scientists are, where you have these like-minded peers, you've created your pride, again, probably because you haven't actually created any research. Notice how a lot of the sciences and a lot of the scientific breakthroughs are from scientists that are no longer alive, right? So it's one of my dreams is to actually be a scientist that goes down in history, actually remember for doing something. And again, that's an intrinsic pride, not just a pride behind people that agree with what I think about. She ate with that. If they are punished for not attracting enough attention, so her second point, that's the other thing. It's almost as if in society we have this idea that fame in any type of way, if you have fame or you have a lot of attention, you must have something to offer, right? If you do not have fame, your thing is less valuable. You see this on the internet. Simply put, people are more inclined, we're all guilty of it, to listen to somebody who has more attention than somebody who has less attention, because the fact they have more attention makes them seem more credible and makes them seem more trustworthy, right? It's the same thing in science, and it's just insane, right? So if you're around like-minded people, you're not attracting enough attention. If they face hurdles to leave a research area where its promise declines, so a lot of reasons could be why your promise is declining, because again, it's down to opinion. Who's funding? If I'm Rolls-Royce and I've been paying, you guys will know if you've been watching videos, the reference. But if I'm Rolls-Royce and I've been paying for you to reduce, to increase the durability of the casing on my jet engines, or to increase the efficiency of fuel use in my jet engines, and I've been paying you for 10 years to do such, right? Eventually, I just thought of One Piece and them killing Vegapunk as well, because he's like the big scientist in One Piece. And eventually they killed him. And his biggest issue on there was he was trying to reproduce things, but he wasn't getting enough funding. Funding was always his issue, right? And again, for somebody to be funding it, Rolls-Royce might turn around and be like, well, I've been paying you for 10 years and I just don't see like this is going anywhere. You might feel like as a scientist, you're on the brink of something, but unfortunately the funding is gone, or you were just given X amount of funding. Like, let's say I asked for 10, like I said, I asked GlaxoSmithKline for 10 million to create Ozempic, right? What if that 10 million runs out and I realize, oh, I actually needed 30? What am I going to do? Maybe they give it me the 30. Maybe after I take the 30, I'm like, oh, I'm right on the brink. I'm going to need just like another 5. They might be like, look, we've already invested 40 million now. The promise is declining here. You see what I'm saying? They can't be counted on to be objective. So basically all of those things put together, which again, and she says, that's the situation we're in today and we have accepted it. Scientists know this. The world doesn't. The public doesn't realize this. The public that trusts in the science is the most trustworthy thing that ever happened, that ever lived, is the public who doesn't recognize these things that I'm talking to you guys about, right? So this is, again, why I'm saying that science is highly biased, in my opinion. And if the good Lord wills, I'll have my own research lab one day. But, you know, this is the problem. This is the problem that also, if anybody wants to fund my research lab, I'm ready. And any scientists start reaching out, because if ever, I'm already looking for scientists to hire in my research lab one day, just saying. Yeah, so you guys see the problem that we're facing here with all of this. And that's something to take into account when we're looking at the validity and the accuracy of these quote unquote scientific, and let's not forget, they're still called theories. Let's not forget that part, okay? So anyway, so she goes on to say, to me, our inability or maybe even unwillingness to limit the influence of social and cognitive biases in scientific communities is a serious systemic failure. So we'll continue with that in the next part. I can't believe how many parts, but there's only like literally not much left. This is only a 2-page paper. Oh my gosh, I can't wait, because the topic she's talking about in the next part. Okay, guys, stay tuned. We're going to come back in the next video. Where am I? Making sure I remember where we're finishing this off, because I'm filming them all now, but for the sake of, you know, breaking things up. Okay, right. We're going to finish this here and we'll continue to the next part. She says, she starts off by saying, we don't protect the values of our discipline. The only response I see are, and that's where we'll continue in the next video. Because if life's game is play to win, I hope you guys can see why this channel is called The Winning Team. Welcome, you're welcome. This is free for everybody. And yeah, God bless you all. God loves you. I love you. And I'll see you in my next one.